All right, we're going to continue our study. Hebrews chapter 8. We're going to cover verses 1 through 6 this afternoon. I want to start off by reading all of these, and then I broke them down into three chunks, verses 1 and 2, verses 3 through 5, and then verse 6. So if you'd like to read along with me, Hebrews chapter 8, we're going to read verses 1 through 6. Now this is the main point of the things we are saying. We have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, the minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord erected and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices. Therefore it is necessary that this high priest is appointed to offer... Hold on a second. Therefore it is necessary that this one also have something to offer. For if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law, who serve the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, "See that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain." But now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises. So chapter 8 is the beginning of a new point in the presentation of the superiority of Christ. And I feel like every time I teach, it's like an overview. And that's kind of what it is, because this is really a hopping point. The first 5 verses are the theme statement of this new section in Hebrews. And so far in the letter to the Hebrews, the writer has shown the superiority of Jesus to the prophets, to the angels, to Moses, to the Levitical priesthood. We know that he is from the order of Melchizedek. We learned that in the last chapter. Now the writer begins to hone in on the priestly ministry of Jesus as it relates to forgiveness of sins. The emphasis is shifted slightly from the Son's priestly office in chapter 4 all the way to chapter 7 to this more excellent priestly ministry. And 3 reasons are introduced in this section to prove that Jesus' priestly ministry is superior. The first one is his ministry involves a better covenant. We'll actually see that in verse 6 that we'll cover tonight. The second thing in this section, he serves in a superior sanctuary. We'll see that in chapter 9. And the third thing is he offers a better sacrifice, for he brings an offering whose effectiveness is beyond question. And that is Hebrews chapter 10. And I want you to think about this. You know, so far in Hebrews, we've talked about how Jesus is better. Jesus is better than everything that we brought up. And this is really the crowning point of the argument, because we've said that Jesus Christ's ministry was better than the Levitical priesthood. We said that he's better than Moses. But if it actually failed, if he failed to actually redeem mankind from sin, then all this is useless, right? Just a bunch of hype. It's kind of like when we're preparing for a Tennessee Vols season. Boy, it's really great whenever they're recruiting class, but game 1, we're like, oh, that hurts. And, you know, that's kind of what it is. And I believe that's why this is really the crowning point of the argument, because he's talking about the forgiveness of sins and Christ's sacrifice and how it was so much better than anything else that these people had ever seen. All right, we'll look at verses 1 and 2. It says, "Now this is the main point of the things we are saying. We have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord erected and not man." And I'm not sure if this would be considered a summary statement right here as he starts the chapter, that this is the main point of what we were saying. I don't know if it's a summary statement, but I guess you would say the point is he's getting to the crown of his argument, the crowning point of his argument. Christ's sacrifice and the effectiveness of that sacrifice. And the writer will continue to talk about that. Chapters 8, chapters 9, chapters 10. Jesus' priesthood is the real thing, and it's authentic. That's what we can get in the verses that we're going to look at this evening. His priesthood is real, it's authentic. The Old Testament priests did their job, but they were a type. They were a type. They were a preview of what Christ would do. Or by the time Hebrews was wrote, what he did do. And these priests continued to stand at the altar over and over to make the same sacrifices, which never took away sin. It moved it forward, but never took away sin. But with Christ as the high priest, we have a finality. We have finality. The earthly sacrifices had to be offered daily. However, Jesus' heavenly offering was a one-time offering. And after his offering, he took his seat, which indicates his sacrificial work was finished. No more offerings need to be made to free mankind from sin. But where did he take a seat? He took a seat at the right hand of God. And that is indicative that he is in an exalted and he's a kingly high priest. In Hebrews chapter 10, we'll jump ahead. I'm not going to try to steal anybody's thunder, but I believe these things solidify our point here. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 11 through 14. It says, "And every priest stands ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices." I believe I have this here too. Oh, look at that. I could even use a highlighter. I think that's what that was called. All right. "And every priest stands ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But this man," talking about Jesus, "after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God, from that time waiting till his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering he's perfected forever those who are being sanctified." And whenever I read this verse, I think of, okay, this is how my mind works. Maybe yours doesn't work that way. Have you ever watched The Sandlot? The kid's telling the story about the dog. And whenever I get to this word forever in here, after he offered one sacrifice for sins, forever. That's what it is. It's forever. It's forever. That's the main point. It's forever. It never has to be offered again. It's forever. It's a one-time deal. One sacrifice for sins forever. And now that does sound superior, doesn't it? That sounds better than any high priest that we've talked about so far. That sounds superior. We jump to Hebrews chapter 9, verses 24 and 28. Just to once again solidify the point. It says, "For Christ has not entered the holy place made with hands, which are copies of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Not that he should offer himself often as the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood of another. He then would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world, but now, once at the end of the ages, he has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly await for him, he will appear a second time, apart from sin, for salvation." He was offered once, and there's finality in Christ. We have the ultimate high priest. And we wonder, why is this? Because as we've read through the Old Testament, and that took a long time. We've read through the Old Testament. Hopefully, we've seen that they did a lot of sacrificing, a whole lot of sacrificing. And Jesus is the minister of the sanctuary and the true tabernacle. And there's a great difference between the place heaven, where Jesus is, and where Jesus ministers, a place built by the Lord himself. And there's a difference in that and the tabernacle in which the Jewish priests ministered, that man built with his hands. So we can see that even where Jesus offered this sacrifice was far greater than what any priest could do. And I believe that we can sum verse 2 up as Jesus ministers in the true or genuine place, a far better place than the Jewish tabernacle, which was built but a small imitation of the real and genuine thing. We'll move on to verses 3 through 5. "For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices. Therefore it is necessary that this one also have something to offer. For if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law, who serve the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, 'See that you make all things according to the pattern shown on the mountain.' And in in verse 3 that we just read, the writer repeats his statement. And this is a statement from Hebrews chapter 5, in which he proves the essential function of every high priest was to offer gifts and sacrifices. And we see here, for every high priest taken from among men is appointed for men in things pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sin. And that was the point. That's what he did. That was his job. So the offering of gifts and sacrifices was the very reason for being a priest. But earthly sacrifices had to be offered on a daily basis. The offering that Jesus, our high priest, made is so superior to all earthly offerings that it was only necessary to make the sacrifice one time. And I believe that we've shown that point over and over and over again this afternoon. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11 through 14. But Christ came as high priest of the good things to come, with the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood he entered the most holy place once and for all, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies for the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. And for this reason he's the mediator of the new covenant by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, that those who are called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. And we look back at the Old Testament and we see that God instructed Moses to build the tabernacle exactly like the pattern shown to him on Mount Sinai. Now, I unpacked this verse a little bit different, and I apologize for that, because it just seemed to me like you should probably talk about Moses and building the tabernacle before you went and talked about Christ. So we're going to do it that way. Hope that makes sense for you. But Moses to build the tabernacle exactly in the pattern shown to him on Mount Sinai. The earthly tabernacle was a type or a copy of the true heavenly tabernacle. So for Moses to know how to construct it, God caused Moses to have a vision to see the heavenly tabernacle. He built it to the specifications that God had asked him to, and the Levitical priests were taught to serve the way God specified them to. But when we look at Christ, Christ could not have been a priest on this earth. That's what he's stating in the verse. Christ could not have been a priest on this earth because he was not of the tribe of Levi. He could not legally make sacrifices. So Jesus never had to play the part of a priest on the earth. He did not have to be an earthly priest or an imitation of the real and genuine thing, as the Levitical priests were. Jesus, on the other hand, never served as high priest in the shadow, but he served in the true tabernacle, which is in heaven. He delivered his sacrifice once and for all. Well, now we move to Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6. But now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises. So Christ has obtained a more excellent ministry. Christians have a high priest whose ministry is better than any Levitical priest can deliver. A further proof of the superiority of Christ is he is also the mediator of a better covenant. A mediator is not a word that I think we use a lot, but a mediator is the middleman or the go-between. He's the middleman or the go-between of a better covenant. And we look back through time, and man usually had a middleman whenever it came to talking or communicating with God. We see that Moses and God talked. And then we have the priest then began to discharge the duties, I guess you would say, of a mediator, standing between God and the people, making sacrifices and offerings for their sins. So usually there was a middleman. But in the new covenant age, Jesus is the one who stands between God and men. And he's interested in both of us. Interested in both parties, I guess you would say. He gave his life for us. So he's very interested in us. And he gets both parties together and makes it possible makes the agreement possible where men are saved and where they draw near to God. So he's a more excellent ministry. He's the mediator of a better covenant. And if you continue in this verse, the new covenant is enacted on better promises. Enacted is imposed or furnished a law with better promises. The better promises will be spelled out one by one in the following verses. Whoever's next gets to talk about that. I believe that's Etienne. Yeah, good. All right. We'll be talking about that. So I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder, but the better promises are the reason that the new covenant's better. Ain't that neat? Better is better. That's the reason it's better. So better promises are the reason the new covenant is better. We have a mediator of a more excellent ministry. We have a better covenant. We have better promises. Well, I guess you would say the conclusion of this is this chapter firmly establishes the fact that Christ is actively high priest. He's actively high priest. And his priestly ministry is the authentic version. The pattern after which the Old Testament priesthood system was fashioned is gone. And there are many details in these verses that I think can cause you to lose track, because whenever I was studying through this, it was hard for me to keep track. And I think if we just sum it all up, Christ is actively high priest, and his ministry is true and final. There are no more sacrifices for sin. He's it. That's all I got this evening. Hopefully something was useful to you. Looking forward to the next study in Hebrews. I've really enjoyed this, and I've learned a lot. We never close the service without offering an invitation. If you've never obeyed the gospel, we can assist you with that. If you're a child of God and you need the prayers of the saints, please come as we stand and as we sing.
Thanks for watching this video. I know what you're thinking. I don't want to miss another video from this channel. In order to avoid that, click on the red button down there, subscribe, and then click the bell icon. Not only will that alert you each time a new video is uploaded to the channel, it will also help spread the channel to other people's awareness. So, go ahead, do it. Like right now, click on it.